Next thing I knew, I was upside down, thinking this is it for me. When you see light flash before you...
Hey y'all, I'm Summer. I used to go to Harvest when I was younger, and I moved to Florida for a little while, and now I'm back at Harvest. And I just want to tell you guys kind of what went on between that time period. I'm 22 years old. I was born in Florida in a small town. There was a lot to do to get you in trouble, but there wasn't a lot to do, you know, to really live the kind of life that would please God. And growing up, I knew God. I went to church and Christian sports camps when I was younger, and I was on fire for God for a long time when I was, 12, 13 years old. I moved up to Georgia when I was 15, and I started going to Harvest. I sang in Kids Cafe back when we were in the theater. I went back home to Florida to visit, got back and hanging out with my friends and the beach and the woods, and my grandma was there, my dad was there. And when I came back to my mom's at the end of the summer, I just had this emptiness in me. Right then, the devil was taking that little bit of homesickness I felt and using it to pull me back to where he wanted me and to where the world wanted me. And I didn't know it right then, but I was at the beginning of a downhill, full head-on collision into the devil's plan for me. I told my mom I wanted to move back to Florida, and the majority of it was for my grandma. She was sick and she was my heart, so I felt like I needed to be with her. But when I made the move and the transition, and I left Harvest and I left the people that brought me up and kept me on track, those accountability partners that you have back in the small town with nothing to do, and now I'm at an age where I had a little bit of freedom, and my parents had put some trust in me, and my friends and I were all on the same page, and we started drinking occasionally. The more I did that, the more I walked away from God, really into a brick wall. My senior year in high school, I hit the wall. I was out one night at a party. I had a drink, and when we decided to leave, we decided that I was the most sober person at the party that was leaving, and that I should drive. We were on a back road. It was dark. There was only a street light every few yards down the road that we went. A car got in front of me, someone that I knew. We were both going too fast, and when she hit her brakes, I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to my friend in the back seat, Cody, and my friend Christy screamed, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Was I going to turn? Was I going to hit her? I ended up turning. Our car flipped numerous times. We hit streetlights, and we flipped and slid into a fence line and a tree. We were cut out of the car with the jaws of life. We were rushed to the hospital. I wasn't there all of 15 minutes before a state trooper was over me asking me if I was the driver of the vehicle. And I told him I was. And he told me that I was being charged with the death of Cody Sherwood. And I was in the hospital for 3 days. I was in a state of confusion, really. I still really hadn't taken in what had gone on. All I knew was I was in a lot of trouble, and that because of me, someone had died. And that feeling doesn't go away. It's not something that you wake up with and it's a little better. It's still bad every day. And I was praying because I always knew God was real. I just wasn't doing what I knew I was supposed to do to live for Him. I went back to school knowing all this was going on, and 3 weeks before graduation, they came into my school and they arrested me in front of everyone. While I was in jail waiting to be sentenced, I thought I was going to get a whole lot of time. I thought I was going to get 12 years, And I prayed. And I prayed for the first time in a few years where I really meant it. The world that I was such good friends with and that I was buddy-buddy with, and I left everything that I knew was right for, that same world was now kicking me while I was down. And that same world was the world that had taken me at my weakest moment and not tried to help me back up like it was doing all those other times, or so I thought. Now that I'm down, it was just laughing at me. And I knew all I had to deal with Cody's death, to deal with what I was about to face, was God. And I read my Bible for the first time, really reading it. I dealt with things in there that only God Himself could protect you from. When I was close to getting out of prison, I actually sat outside one day and just kind of looked at the sky, and I told God that I wanted Him to use me. Looking back on the accident happening, my friend dying, dealing with the depression, all of that, He was preparing me for something so much greater, and He was strengthening me not only in my walk with Him, but for what He really had prepared for me. And I told Him sitting outside that day that I knew I was going back out into the world. And even though I was in prison, I was sheltered to an extent because it was bad in there, but with limitations. Out here, I have my freedom back, and someone's not over my shoulder 24 hours telling me and watching my every move. But I knew better this time, and I knew that's not what I wanted to happen. And in that talk with God, I can't explain how I felt Him, but I can still get the chills that I have from that same feeling that I had when I was 13 years old and I got saved for the first time. I got back going to Harvest and got back in ministry and kind of felt that fire again, only this time I know where I went, and I know that God saved me. He saved me in a moment when the world was trying to kill me. I was 17 years old. I was young, and I could blame it on that. I could blame it on my friends. I could blame it on the town. I could blame it on anything. I could sit here and I could say it was anyone else's fault, but the truth of the matter is that I knew what was right. I chose to walk away. And when you're seconds from death and you've done something to take another person's life, even though I know it was an accident, there's no going back after that point. And I know that God, He wants to use me. He wants to use you. He wants to use everyone. You know, I was that one sheep that got away from the herd or the flock, and He came and He got me and He brought me back. And I don't want to let Him down again. The world, to me, is not worth it. It's not worth walking away from God. I've been able to speak to a school, to a graduating class. I've been able to tell them what I didn't hear and really what I heard and ignored. And I've been able to talk to people and maybe give them a little more hope than what I was given, and to show them that you can stay with God and it can be the thing to do. It can be the cool thing. It's not about what everyone else thinks. It's about what's it worth? Is it worth life? You guys are up in the mountains right now. Take in the beautiful scene around you and know that He did that. And if He can create that, there are no limits to what He can do with you too. Thank you guys. Have fun.
Live my life a little man, 'cause I've been halfway to heaven.